Good evening, America. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the latest edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from Washington, D.C., and, of course, the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. We're very proud of our partnership with Wired to Fish Coffee. It's a coffee that tastes great, my favorite coffee, but it also does good. With every cup of coffee you drink, you help support Christian causes and conservation causes so that our children and grandchildren can enjoy the great outdoors. If you want to go check them out, go to Wired, the number 2 fishcoffee.com, use the promo code JustNews, or point your camera at that QR code. You'll be on your way to a great discount. They give special discounts for Just the News fans, so please go check them out. All right, we are officially now on Ukraine ceasefire watch. Yep, the Democrats said it wasn't possible. It is on the edge of possibility. President Trump had what he reported to be productive conversations with both Russian President Vladimir Putin yesterday and today with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Earlier today, Trump himself wrote on Truth Social that the call with Zelensky was, quote, very good, and that he spoke for about an hour. And the Ukrainian president, for his part, also described the call as quite positive, as well as substantive and frank. He said he'd be, by the way, Zelensky declared today that he'd be for the partial ceasefire that President Trump negotiated with Vladimir Putin yesterday. So there are signs that things are about to move, particularly on protecting those energy and maritime infrastructure from future attacks. That's a very big deal. And the first sign of progress on the side of negotiations, there were some prisoner swaps today between Russia and Ukraine. That's also a good sign that maybe things are warming up between the two and that a deal could be had. We're going to keep on top of this at justthenews.com, so don't worry, we got you covered. And how about this? Everyone remembers the Russian collusion scandal, right? I sure did. I lived about 5 years of it. Well, where the media and some inside American government insiders seemingly teamed up to push a story that President Trump was being influenced by Russia. Remember that? A story they knew was false, that they had made it up. Well, today the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, comes on the show a lot, certainly remembers it, and he is taking steps to finally get to the bottom of it. He's now asking the new FBI director, Kash Patel, to end the Biden-era stonewalling on the FBI's Trump-Russia collusion documents. Those are the documents I was supposed to get on January 20, 2021, but we didn't get them, even though President Trump had declassified them. We're going to get them, I promise you. Now, the reason he's asking for these documents now is that he hasn't asked for them before. He has, but the FBI under Chris Wray refused to turn them over. Isn't that amazing? Even though it was a standing chairman of a recognized congressional committee. Now, some of those requests included information documents concerning the FBI's failings in opening and conducting the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, as well as records comparing Crossfire Hurricane to the FBI's investigation of you-know-who. Yep, Hillary Clinton. You got that right. Jordan also asked for any and all documents and transcripts in possession of the FBI which were cited or used by John Durham's inquiry, that those also be handed over. The deadline, early April, so we're just a few weeks away. Now, Just the News reported earlier this week that Patel has already begun handing over to Jordan troves of other dockets related to the weaponization of the Justice Department and FBI and other scandals related to that, going after parents, going after Catholics, things like that. Now, we'll see how those, we expect to see some of those as early as tomorrow. Now, good time to bring in my amazing co-host, Amanda Head, for other headlines. Amanda, what else are you checking out today?
Well, John, I, for one, am shocked that Director Wray did not turn over those documents.
Yeah. I sensed a little bit of sarcasm.
Just a little bit.
There's no doubt. Yeah, listen, he stonewalled. He protected an agency, and the way he could have protected the agency better was by letting the stuff come out and fix it. Transparency would have fixed this stuff, but he chose not to do that.
All right, I'm going to get into talking about Tesla because it looks like some on the left have decided to target it because it is one of Elon Musk's businesses. And when I say target, I absolutely mean it, because there have been attacks all across this country against individual owners of the cars as well as the company itself and dealerships. And instead of people in the Democrat Party denouncing it, well, they're kind of fanning the flames. Late night host and famous lefty Jimmy Kimmel played this little tongue-in-cheek game last night.
Tesla stock is way down, almost disastrously so. People have been vandalizing Tesla vehicles, new Tesla vehicles. Please don't vandalize. Don't ever vandalize Tesla vehicles. And so...
And in the same spirit, it's a shame that his show is failing and that it's on the shopping block by ABC. Now, he's a comedian, so I guess he can go ahead and chalk that up to a joke, but there's no question that people on the left badly want to see the world's leading electric car company, that's, by the way, helping them clean up the environment, fail. Count the man who could have been vice president right now, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, among them.
saying on my phone, I don't know, some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So, and if you own one, we're not blaming you. You can take dental floss and pull the Tesla thing off, you know, and take out, just telling you.
Taking joy in the damage of an American company, I don't think that's the greatest look for any party in this country. But what also isn't the greatest look for any party, including the Democrats, is a little bit of infighting, because we still have leaders within that party on Capitol Hill taking some slight jabs at Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer for letting the Republican-led CR pass. Former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi had this to say.
I myself don't give away anything for nothing. And I think that's what happened the other day. We could have, in my view, perhaps gotten them to agree to a third way.
I could definitely make a comment about her not giving anything away for free if you check out her stock portfolio, but I'm going to sidestep that comment and let you bring in our first guest of the night.
Not to mention the trillions of dollars they gave away that got stolen by foreigners and fraudsters around the country. Well,
Yep.
Nancy Pelosi still trying to be relevant. How about that? All right. Someone who is very relevant, if you were watching the White House on Friday afternoon when Amanda was there, our next guest was right alongside the president and Pam Bondi, the attorney general. He is now leading the fight to back up the president on the president's ability to deport those criminal, illegal alien gang members who are causing harm all across the country. He is South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson. He joins us right now. General Wilson, good to have you on the show.
It's great to be with you both. Thanks for having me.
We love having you on. We always learn so much. Almost every day, there's a big press release coming out of your office about something really substantial. In the last 24 hours, you're leading the state's attorneys generals who are supporting Trump on this deportation case. Tell us what's at stake here and what you think of the way the judge has acted in this, Judge Boasberg.
Well, first off, I was joined by 25 other states, actually the state or the Commonwealth of Virginia. Attorney General Jason Miyares, my dear friend, we co-led this amicus brief, basically supporting President Trump's executive order and trying to get the courts to turn over or basically stay the temporary restraining order they placed on it. Basically, you have a singular federal district court judge basically inserting himself into a fundamental power of the presidency under Article 2 and under federal law. The president should be able to do things like affect foreign policy and engage in the protection of national security. This judge has no more business trying to turn a plane around, taking terrorists out of this country, than that judge has going into the Pentagon and telling generals that they can't fire missiles at combatants. This is a ridiculous, illogical decision this judge made, and I fully support the president's right to be able to remove terrorists from this country. When you look at Tren de Agua, this is a Venezuelan gang that began in a prison in Venezuela and has been stood up and supported by the Maduro regime down there. So it's supported by the government. And when you look at the Alien Enemies Act, which is a 1798 law, which has since been codified, it gives the president the statutory authority to remove people who are basically being stood up or supported by another national government coming into our country, either in the form of an invasion or an incursion. Which they are doing. And again, these Tren de Aragua are no different than ISIS or Osama bin Laden or Hezbollah. They're coming into our country, and their whole point is to create chaos and commit violent acts. And removing them from this country makes our cities and states safer. And we have judges now standing up for Tren de Aragua than they are standing up for the American people.
General Wilson, this is not going to be an isolated incident. I know that President Trump, every day of his presidency, is going to have situations like this. What's the remedy? Because we obviously have co-equal branches of government, but the difference here is that the judicial branch is a whole system and a whole network of judges across this entire country. The executive branch is headed up by one man. Is that the constitutional basis? Is that all he needs?
Well, I mean, look, honestly, what we need is we need the Supreme Court to remedy and rectify these radical leftist judges who are basically trying to not follow the rule of law. They're following their own personal views of what they want the law to be, not what the law actually is. Clarence Thomas said this in a concurring opinion in 2018 in Trump v. Hawaii, where the president was also having executive orders challenged. Clarence Thomas actually acknowledged that federal district judges are getting a little too ornery. They're getting a little too popular with these nationwide injunctions where they're trying to dictate national policy from the bench. And that he suggested that the Supreme Court might want to get involved. That is what I would like to see this Supreme Court do, is end this radical leftist agenda from the bench once and for all.
Yes, sir. You have been done so much on a lot of the big cases that really are going to be historic cases in the next few months. One of those on birthright citizenship. Yeah. You filed a friend of court brief with several of your colleagues in other states who are also attorneys general defending where the president is. This is a historic case. Tell us a little bit about why you intervened and where it could ultimately end up.
Well, listen, Article 14 of the U.S. Constitution was drafted and written by its framers to confer citizenship rights to emancipated slaves, not to confer citizenship rights to people passing through this country who are here illegally, to confer citizenship rights to the children of diplomats or sojourners or travelers or people who were here illegally. It was never designed to do that. It says all persons born or naturalized and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the U.S. People forget about that second part, and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They think that if you can come here in the middle of the night and drop a baby, you can somehow anchor yourself here forever. That is nonsensical, it's illogical, and the reason I've joined this brief to go to the Supreme Court is that this is a vehicle for the Supreme Court to right the wrong of the last 150 years of misinterpretation and misapplication of this birthright citizenship jurisprudence.
And that's the end of that. That's all the argument you need, I feel like. General Wilson, I want to ask you about all of these actions against President Trump. And we've kind of hypothesized around this newsroom. In fact, I think someone wrote an article here to its effect. The fact that a lot of these actions from President Trump seem to be an attempt to expedite all of these issues, or maybe one core precedent issue to the Supreme Court so that we can nip it in the bud. Does it seem to you like that might be a motivating factor?
I absolutely think it could be a motivating factor. And again, this is a great vehicle. Honestly, we have supposedly a 6-3 court, and I'm hopeful that the vehicle that the president is giving us with some of these executive orders, which are founded and based in his constitutional authority and statutory authority, will give us a vehicle to raise these issues to the highest court in the land. And again, we can hopefully resolve these once and for all. I love the fact that the president is moving with lightning speed. He is going in there. He's doing what he said he would do. The border has been shut down by 98% of the illegal cross traffic since January 20th when he took office. And again, this is important to me because a lot of the stuff coming across the southern border, the fentanyl, the human trafficking, the drug trafficking, the violent criminal activity, the Tren de Agua, the MS-13, all that stuff coming over here has been stopped. Now we got to bail out the water and get these people back. We plugged the hole in the boat. Now we got to bail out the water so this country can move forward. And these EOs and these actions that are going to be going to the Supreme Court are going to be an excellent vehicle for us to facilitate that and move forward.
Yeah. Sir, the other branch of government that hasn't entered discussion a lot is Congress. Are there things that Congress can do to maybe rein in a single judge in a single district, perhaps with a political motive, tying up an entire country from the president being able to carry out his executive duties? Is there some reform? Is there some central court like an intelligence court that Congress might conceive to overcome this and create a little bit more even-handedness on these very sweeping injunctions?
Well, you know, Congress over the last several decades has ceded so much authority to the executive branch, and a lot of these folks in Congress, and the Republicans could do a better job, but a lot of the people in the legislative branch of government have ceded a lot of authority to the court system. One of my favorite stories from history is Andrew Jackson. It was not a good case. I didn't agree with what he did, but there was a Supreme Court case in Georgia where Georgia ruled that he couldn't remove the Indians from those reservations there, and he said, well, they've made their opinion, now let them enforce it. Now, I'm not suggesting we do that, but the point of that story is that we can't be governed and administered by the court in this country. The court, it needs to be an equal check and balance on all three branches of government, and I would like to see the executive and legislative branch of government have parity with the courts. And we haven't seen that in the last several years, and that's going to require us, first of all, to elect rule of law, principled presidents like President Donald Trump, who are going to put rule of law, strict constructionist members on the court. I mean, that's the first thing. Elections have consequences. That's where we start. Secondly, you hold judges accountable. Congress has the power of the purse. I mean, obviously, using impeachment is a rare and radical measure that the Constitution allows us to do, but that's high crimes and misdemeanors. But when appropriate, it should be pursued. And again, as I said, the power of the purse is another area we could do it. And of course, the American people, have a right to have three branches of government in equal check with one another so that we don't have this totalitarian regime that you've seen in the administrative state that has been supported by the judiciary for so many years.
Yeah.
Sir, before we let you go, I wanted to get your take on Chief Justice John Roberts' statement that he just recently put out.
Well, you know, Congress over the last several decades has ceded so much authority to the executive branch of government. A lot of the people in the legislative branch of government have ceded a lot of authority to the court system. And
Oh, did we lose?
We may
did we
have
lose the
lost you,
Attorney
Attorney
General?
General.
Are y'all there?
Yes, we may have lost you there for a second, sir.
Oh, I apologize. I thought you were going to play something. If you're talking about the statement that the Chief Justice made earlier, I mean, obviously, I read it earlier this morning. I mean, look, I don't disagree that impeachment is a radical and extreme thing that you use. I saw how it was used against President Trump twice in his first administration. I thought it was reprehensible. I thought it was abhorrent. And I think it's something that should be rarely used. But I do think, like Clarence Thomas said in Trump v. Hawaii in his concurring opinion, that the Supreme Court has an opportunity to check these district court judges who are instigating or initiating these nationwide injunctions and ruling from the bench and basically governing from the bench and legislating from the bench. That is something we can't have it happen, and I think we have the court at the Supreme Court level who can address that and fix that once and for all.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's probably where it will end up. As always, sir, you're on the front lines of all of the big moments on the legal side of this country. It's great to have you on again today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate you so much. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come up, last night, more than 80,000 pages of JFK files from his assassination and the subsequent investigations have been released. Is there any bombshells in them? We'll take a closer look when we come back. Hey, America, the fight to restore our great nation is only beginning, and now is the time to take a stand, and Patriot Mobile is leading the charge. As America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, Patriot Mobile offers a way to vote with your wallet without compromising on quality or convenience. That's important, right? Patriot Mobile isn't just about providing exceptional cell phone service, it's a call to action to defend our rights and our freedoms. With Patriot Mobile, you'll get outstanding nationwide coverage because they operate on all three major networks. Now, if you have cell phone service today, you can get cell phone service with Patriot Mobile with a coverage guarantee. But the difference is every dollar you spend supports the First and Second Amendments, the sanctity of life, and our veterans and first responders. Switching is easy. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% US-based customer support team are going to help you find the right plan for you. Right now, go to patriotmobile.com/justnews or call 972-PATRIOT and get a free month of service with promo code JUSTNEWS. Switch to Patriot Mobile today and defend freedom with every call and text you make. Visit patriotmobile.com/justnews or call 972-PATRIOT.
Welcome back, everybody. Just as we were going off air last night, thousands and thousands of pages of the JFK files were released to the public. And what was in them? Joining us now to discuss that, leading attorney and expert on the JFK Assassination Records Act, Larry Schnapp. Larry, thank you so much for being here.
Hi there. Thanks for nice to see you again.
Absolutely.
Twice in 2 days.
Long time no see. And I believe we did say on air last night, Larry, we might be seeing you tomorrow. So I guess we augured what was to come. All right. I know what everyone is thinking here because no one had time to read 80,000 plus pages of documents in the last 24 hours. But I know that you've got some keen intel on some of the big things that came out of it. What were some of the surprises to you?
So, well, first of all, we still are waiting for the so-called new FBI documents, 2,400 pages, documents, roughly 14,000 pages. So we haven't seen those. What's been released so far is about 2/3 of the records that were in the collection that had been previously redacted. And it looks like everyone's trying to honor President Trump's wishes, and there's very few redactions. So that's good. So they're doing what he asked them to do. The biggest thing so far has been the release of this Schlesinger memo from 1961, after President Kennedy had asked Arthur Schlesinger to help him reorganize the CIA. 2 pages had been redacted. They're now completely unredacted. And what we now have learned is what they were hiding was that Schlesinger discovered that up to 40% of our staff and our embassies across the world were actually CIA people. And that he was concerned the CIA was actually using this to influence foreign policy instead of the State Department. So that was one of the things that came out of that.
Yeah.
It looks like we had a lot more spying going on in other countries that we didn't want people to know about. We have more information now on the intelligence operation in Mexico City. We even have a document where they're telling people how to actually install the telephone taps.
Yep.
So I guess that may have been a method for security in those days.
Right.
It looks like there's some more information about mafia involvement in Castro assassination attempts. Somebody said today, I'm not sure. So what's happening is there's so many documents released that the team on JFK Facts, we've broken out the various sections, the agency. So I'm doing the FBI, but someone told me that they found a document that suggests that just shows closer ties of Ruby to the mob.
Yep.
I mean, as if that's a surprise.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's actually a document that was from 2 years ago or a recent, whether it's new news.
Yeah.
So we also learned that one of the Watergate plumbers, Bernard Barker, was in fact a CIA undercover agent.
He was.
So we're learning a lot more about what was going on in our country, the covert operations of our country, and the events leading up to the assassination. We really haven't seen anything else. There was an interesting note from '91. A Russian, a Soviet, I guess it was Russian agent, said he had looked at the 5 thick files of Oswald.
Yep.
And confirmed that there was no KGB involvement. But he also said that the Russians were convinced that he was a lousy marksman, which again is consistent with his Marine training records.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're kind of like, I guess, in the 5th inning. Now the other interesting news last night that President Trump dropped that has been kind of overlooked is that he announced that the sealed records and the grand jury records are going to be released.
Yep.
He's instructed the Department of Justice to begin that process of doing that. That would mean, if he's right, I mean, if this is what he's talking about, and I did send a letter to the White House counsel asking for this, that the Carlos Marcello tapes from the Camtex sting operation in the mid-1980s will be released.
Yep.
Allegedly, he had told his cellmate, Jack Van Langenham. Jack Van Langenham was a FBI undercover agent, and they made him a cellmate of Marcello because apparently they were getting friendly, and they put a listening device in a radio that was in the cell. And allegedly, Carlos Marcello confessed to being behind the assassination and saying basically, my only regret is I didn't do it myself.
Right.
That he knew Oswald. He knew the family because Oswald's uncle was a runner for the Marcello family.
Wow.
So that would be really big news if that does get released. And obviously that's a process. They have to go down to the court and get that released. Still no word on the Joe Anides files, which I know Jeff Morley's been very interested in. No word on the RFK Family Trust records. And it does not look like Tulsi Gabbard, when last night, when she dropped her memo, she said that she had told all her agencies to declassify all of the records in the JFK collection.
Right.
But there are records that are held by the CIA that are not in the collection. And I think we're going to have to reinforce that they need to do another search because there are outstanding search requests from 1998 that have not been completed.
No, look at that. I only got a couple minutes left, Larry. You are such a fount of wisdom, and you know this better than anyone. There were some really valuable things. You mentioned the Watergate thing. That really jumped out to me today when we found it. But there are these interviews of CIA officers that were done a decade later in 75, 76, 77 with the Rockefeller and the Church Commission and other bodies that were doing oversight of the CIA. Some pretty interesting revelations. 2 of them, pretty clear that the CIA first had Oswald on their radar in 59 because of an FBI inquiry about him. And that the CIA also was certain that Bobby Kennedy and Robert Kennedy were behind the efforts to assassinate Fidel Castro, which could theoretically create a motive for Castro or the mob, which was once enlisted to go after Castro, to maybe have sour grapes with the Kennedy family. How important are these sort of interviews that go into more depth and things that we've seen before?
Oh, they're important. You know, Marcelo had not only the incentive to get rid of Castro, but he was actually on trial the week of the assassination.
That's right.
Bobby, had deported him to Guatemala, and he had to walk through 14 miles of jungle. But so that's important information. The Angleton and some other people, their testimony had been redacted. And Mayhew, who's the guy that actually put together the mafia and the CIA, his testimony was also unredacted. Interestingly, most of the stuff that was redacted was about prostitution.
Yeah, I'm shocked. Might have spared us a little bit of detail there. All right.
Yeah. Larry, before we let you go, I feel like once you go through the process of poring over all of these and hopefully what's to come in the near future, you going to write a book?
I have in my head a book about how I think it really happened. I'm going to probably write it with my buddy who's a former mafia guy, because he knows how the mafia works inside.
Great.
But that's something I'm torn between that and also just doing a regular legal analysis of the evidence. So,
Well, regardless of which you choose, let it come here first.
Yeah, I'll pre-order a copy too. I can't
Absolutely,
wait.
me
It's going to be a
too.
masterpiece.
Me too. Larry
Good to have
Schnapp,
you.
attorney.
I'm going to try to get some sleep tonight, but we'll be working diligently the rest of the week.
We
Thank
know
you,
you
sir.
will.
We
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
you so
Larry,
much.
thanks so much for being here, sir.
Okay, thank you. See you soon.
All righty. Next up, we've got Congressman Andy Biggs. He's going to come and speak to us about a plethora of issues. We'll be right back.
Folks, let me encourage you to do something right now. You need to join AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. Right now, I'm not kidding. If you care about your country, your freedom, and your hard-earned money, then AMAC is the organization that fights for you. Unlike the other so-called senior organization that sold out to the radical left, AMAC stands for conservative values, limited government, lower taxes, protecting your Social Security, and of course, defending our Constitution. And listen to this. Right now, you can sign up for a 5-year membership, just like I have, for just $31. It's normally $60. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Visit amac.us/justnews to join right now. AMAC is growing fast because patriots like you and me are joining the fight. They give you exclusive discounts on travel insurance and more. I use that all the time. But most importantly, they give you a voice in Washington. So don't wait. Join AMAC today. Go to amac.us/justnews. Welcome back, America. With all the news going on in Washington, I mean, literally, history's being made every day, every 6 hours. It's really kind of remarkable. I thought we'd turn to one of our most trusted voices in Congress. He is a fountain of common sense in a city that lacks a lot of it. He's also on the front lines of some of the biggest battles that I think are going to transform America for the better. And now he's a candidate for Arizona governor. A lot of people excited about that. And of course, he's the host of one of my favorite podcasts, one of the few I listen to, What's the Biggs Idea? I wish I had a great line like that. Such a good one. Joining us right now, Congressman Andy Biggs. Sir, good to have you on the show.
John, Amanda, it's great to be with you. And Amanda, I do have a plethora of issues, but let's not cover my personal problems to your audience, okay?
I'm sure there are absolutely none.
Oh, gosh, I would never want my wife on the show. You can't imagine where that would go with my wife. Oh, my gosh. All right, sir, down to some serious business. I've been looking at some of these temporary injunctions. I've been covering the courts for 35 years as a reporter. I've never seen so many TROs, nationwide TROs, in this short a period of time. They're kind of getting handed out like candy on Halloween. Is there something going on, or are these judges just evading some of the legal precedents for these very rare instruments in joining a president nationwide?
Well, I know that judges have judicial conferences, and I don't know if some of them are getting together and saying and viewing themselves as the last hope of the leftist progressive cause. But I'll tell you this, they've definitely exceeded the bounds and scope of their jurisdictional authority, and Congress has got to act and go after that. That's why I've got one of my bills that's dealing with a jurisdiction on nationwide injunctions. We're working at other things to see if we can actually rein in funding for some of these courts. And by the way, And John Amanda, you know this. I know many of your listeners know this. Congress is the ones, after this U.S. Supreme Court and some specific jurisdictional authorities delegated to them in the Constitution, Congress sets and organizes and establishes any other court and jurisdiction. So I would just suggest that Congress probably has to get in there more with more alacrity and to resolve this, because it is a huge, huge problem. And it's, in my opinion, they're violating their authority. And I'll just tell you something else we could do. A lot of people say, well, this is lifetime tenure. That's not exactly accurate. The Constitution doesn't mention lifetime tenure. The Constitution mentions term of good behavior. Right. And I believe that allows us a reason to actually terminate them, fire them for for their misconduct.
And could that be something short of impeachment?
It could be. It wouldn't. Yeah, I believe you don't have to establish an impeachment to go forward with that. I think that Congress could simply say either we're going to defund you, but that might be a different animal. But this animal would say we have resolved that you are acting in bad faith, or you're not acting as the exact language is like term of good behavior. We no longer find you acting in good behavior, and so we're removing you from your office. Wow. And I don't even think you need an impeachment to do that.
Wow.
Congressman, someone who definitely did have a plethora of issues when it came to policy rearing up against the court system was the last president, President Joe Biden, on issues like student loan debt, remain in Mexico, a number of issues that the courts ruled on, and President Biden just flouted it, just completely ignored it. What would happen if President Trump did that?
Well, they're always claiming that he is doing that, but he has recently said, "Look, I'm going to do everything I possibly can, but we're not going to ignore a court order," and that includes these illegal court orders. So we're working through the process to actually stop the courts. The Biden administration said we will ignore the courts, and that's a huge difference, and it shows all the distinction. Quite frankly, it's a type of showing the distinction between the right and the left. The right believe in the rule of law, the left does not.
Yeah, so important. So I want to dig in a little bit more on the possible reform that could occur for these temporary injunctions. We have a FISA court for a reason, because FISA warrants are so sensitive. Is there a TRO court concept that maybe Congress can say? What are some of the ideas that you have in your legislation or that your colleagues are talking about as a solution?
Well, you hit one of them, and that is a panel to review injunctions. Another one is so you don't create these nationwide injunctions out of a single district court. Another one is exactly what I'm talking about. There's multiple bills out there, and I think we're going to get these pretty soon, actually. And that is, you limit the jurisdiction to the litigants in front of you. That, by the way, that's consistent with stare decisis. That's exactly what was meant. Yeah. And then if you think that injunction should apply somewhere else, you have to file in a different court for that geographical jurisdiction. So that's another one. Then, quite frankly, we're looking at, do you actually limit certain questions that can go before a court? In other words, the subject matter jurisdiction. Do you limit the court's subject matter jurisdiction to, and how it can be applied? And that's another one that people are kicking around too.
Sir, it's on a different topic, but I want to make sure we hit it before we let you go. You, I think, are probably one of the most trusted Republicans when it comes to being fiscally conservative. Republicans have their work cut out for them this summer when it comes to creating the next budget framework. How hard do you anticipate that's going to be with some of the folks who are a little reticent to cut out spending?
Well, Amanda, it's going to be really tough. And I told the speaker, I've told him, said, look, I voted for that last CR, but you've promised me now that you're going to get back to regular order. We're going to get 12 appropriations bills. We did 7 last year, by the way. And so if you can do 7 when we don't even have the president pushing on you, then I think he's going to need to use his bully pulpit. But I would suggest we can get most of them done, 8, 9, 10, maybe all 12, and then send them to the Senate. And if that were to happen, you would be really breaking the cycle of out of control spending that the CRs have given to us. I'm hopeful we're going to do it. I think we're going to get that done. Tom Cole has assured people he's going to get that done. Yeah. He's the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. And so I'm putting a lot of hope in that, although I'm a healthy skeptic as well.
Being in Washington a while will do that to you. There's no doubt. One last quick question, sir. You have legislation. You were one of the proponents, really one of the great investigators who dug up all of the weaponization of the FBI and Justice Department. You've got legislation that really addresses it to prohibit it in the future. Tell us quickly about that.
Yeah, so we want to prevent this weaponization. We're going to stop it, and we're going to actually punish people. That's what we're going to do. If you punish people, I call that specific deterrent, which creates a general deterrent. As soon as one or two people get specifically deterred, it deters everybody else.
Yeah, so important. So very important. Sir, as always, what a great honor to have you on the show. Next time we get you on, we're going to get an update on how the campaign is going in Arizona. But great to have you on today.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you, sir. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll take a look at Trump's tariff policy. Is China feeling the heat? Well, we'll ask our next guest. He'll know right after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody. The Fed kept interest rates steady, taking a cautious approach as President Trump's bold trade policies continue reshaping not only our own economy, but the global economy as well. And despite media hand-wringing over inflation, central bankers still anticipate cutting rates twice more this year, just as they projected months ago. So, however, their latest outlook suggests a modest adjustment in economic growth and employment, signs of a necessary recalibration rather than cause for alarm. But we keep hearing the president's tariff policies may lead to an economic downturn. So, should he stay the course? Joining us now is longtime media executive, USC professor, producer, and author of Feeding the Dragon: Inside the $1 Trillion Dilemma Facing Hollywood, Chris Fenton. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back. I think this is time number 3, so I'm super excited.
We're very, very happy to have you, and you just recently put out a piece for Real Clear Politics, coupling the border and tariffs together and how they impact us, not just our border security, but obviously our economy on the tariff side of things. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, it really comes down to a sort of a Main Street versus Wall Street scenario where we actually want to get both on equal footing, and it's been off that equal footing for quite some time, I would say roughly since 1978. But if you look at strong border policy, that's really about a national security issue, obviously, and various other things. But on top of it, it's about preventing low-wage workers from getting into the United States and competing with American workers. And the same thing goes for tariffs. Tariffs are really a protectionist policy, much like border protection, that is keeping our companies from moving offshore to find that low wage labor if they can't get it here. Or if they've already done it, it incentivizes them to bring it back. And that's what really President Trump is trying to accomplish, both on his tariff policy and on his border policy.
Yeah, really, really important. There is this sort of gas and brake pedal sort of approach here, because at the same time the president, is doing tariffs, and Wall Street panics a little bit every time he talks the word tariff. There's signs that the shrinking of government will put downward pressure on inflation, downward pressure on interest rates, which the markets always love to hear about. It's possible that the president can kind of ride this without the market going into any sort of tailspin, right?
Well, I think in the short term, we are going to see some pushback from Wall Street and from the markets itself. I mean, when you're doing anything that's sort of disruptive, even if it's constructively disruptive, you are going to affect markets. But in the long term, and I think even Donald Trump has said it in various interviews, he's looking at China, for instance, as a model in terms of how to approach fixing or improving what a country is. If China works on 100-year plans, he's saying, don't look at your stock portfolio on a minute-by-minute case or even on a week-by-week case. We need to think long-term here. We're going to detox for a bit. But on the backside of this, we're going to bring jobs back to America, and we're going to put more people in the private sector, which is quite frankly what DOGE is doing, which is trying to move people from the public sector, which is a bit of a drag on the economy, into a place where capital is put to better use.
Chris, one of the things that President Trump promised on the campaign trail was bringing down inflation. That was obviously under crushing inflation under Joe Biden and Bidenomics. But the economic reality is that with tariffs in place, it might be a little while before inflation cools any more than it did the other day, which was, what, 0.2% or so. Do you think that assessment's pretty close to reality?
Well, look, it's sort of mainstream media messaging, which is this is going to be inflationary as we go through this disruptive process. And they're not wrong. It's going to be inflationary on a short-term basis. But no one's going back and talking about, hey, what happened 100 years ago when people like Henry Ford decided, you know what, if I pay my workers more because I'm manufacturing here in the United States of America, they're going to be able to afford the product that we're producing, the product that they're actually laboring to make. So we're going to see inflationary pressures occur over the short term, but over the longer term, we're going to see wage increases that by far
Chris,
surpass those.
We're going to pause on this for a moment and see if they can reconnect with Chris, because I think we were getting a little bit of pixelation throughout that. Yeah. Your thoughts on what he was saying, because there is quite a bit of doomsdaying about what the economy is going to do in reaction to the tariffs.
I think he said it, and I think the president's starting to pick up this message. You got to play the long game on this. China's playing a long game, and we've been playing a short game, and that's why China's made so many gains against us. And in fact, not only have they made gains, many times American institutions like Hollywood and others have enabled it, as Chris's incredible book documented a few years ago. So the long game is a good argument, and there's this sort of dynamic. There's obviously going to be inflationary pressures up by tariffs at some point, but then there's downward pressure when you start to cut government and you start to take the money off the street and you solve the employment crisis and other things. And so I think that there's a lot going on. It's an ecosystem that's going to have some impact for a while, but he's always. So let's turn back. I think we got Chris back, his signal back. There he is. Chris, one last thought for you. You wrote, I think, the epic book about how one of America's signature industries, Hollywood, enabled China. Tell us where we are. Have we made some gains in rebalancing the relationship with China? Not just obviously with President Trump we have, but downstream from him, is business a little bit more cautious about how they deal with China?
Business is 100% more cautious. There's been a lot of things that have occurred there that have really scared C-suites from investing too much time and energy into that market now than they've already done. We've seen sweeps of various office buildings, people detained for reasons that are very nefarious. So we are starting to see a pullback from that market and also a rebalancing in terms of tariffs. I mean, we've seen tariffs as high as 3,000%. Now we've seen those max tariffs down to about 500%. And then even in the Hollywood business, we've seen export taxes decrease down to about 50%. So the idea of seeing a 50% return for your box office revenue in that market around the world, we're seeing 25% coming from China. So they are still applying those taxes and still applying tariffs, but they are decreasing to an extent. And we're going to see more of that as Trump really puts his pedal on the gas.
Yeah. Chris, before we let you go, I did want to press in on the Hollywood thing. Does it still seem to you, though, that there are incentives within production companies and movie houses to appease China when it comes to their content?
Well, we've seen that mitigate quite a bit because the market, we've gone from an 80% of that market share back in, say, 2012 down to about 8%. But with a recent hit movie that was made domestically there, that's an animation film called Ninja, that's made over $2 billion just in that market alone. So Hollywood's paying attention, and they are going to try to figure out how they can tap into that golden goose again.
Yeah. Well, if Hollywood would put out more patriotic stuff like they did with the last Top Gun, I think that their box office numbers would explode. So maybe go the other direction, Hollywood. Chris Benton, thank you so much for being here again. We'll have you back on very soon.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. We got a few thoughts on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. I don't know how many people have actually read all the documents that came out last night, but I do know that a lot of memes have transpired from it, and some of you might know, John, you probably know one of my love languages is memes and GIFs, and so I love seeing everything that has come out
You
from
like
this.
memes? I didn't know
I
that.
do,
Wait a second.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes. It's kind of my love language. There are many text threads on my phone where it's just memes and GIFs back and forth. But one of them I saw was a guy who has a big grin on his face, and he says, "Oh my gosh, the JFK files are out. I'm so excited. I've been waiting 60 years. And then he looks at the documents and he has this withdrawn look on his face and he says, "Oh, I'm not reading that." It was a lot. It was a lot. But I know that you poured
And
through.
it's not all out yet.
I know.
They're still doing, as Larry pointed out, a lot of FBI documents. I think there's some really interesting stuff. And I think one of the dynamics that this will potentially fill in is that we're gonna be much more clear, much more certain that President Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy wanted to assassinate Castro. That's how they want to deal with the Soviet threat in Cuba. And early on, the CIA probably, without the FBI, without the president's knowledge, were turning to mobsters to do that because they had positions in Florida and the South, and they could get to Cuba, and they had friends in Cuba. And then some of those didn't go so well. The mobsters felt left hanging to dry, and then Bobby Kennedy knocks his crackdown on the mob, and the mob's thinking, well, wait a second, we tried to help you on Cuba, and you're rolling us up? Mobsters like Marcelo, who I think is going to become a really important figure before we're all done, as Larry mentioned. I think that dynamic may explain if there was a plot that went beyond Lee Harvey Oswald, which the Warren Commission always left open, possibility there were others involved, that at the end of the day, that dynamic may have set in motion. And if we get the Carlos Marcelo intercept in prison, he may actually elaborate as to why he wanted to whack John Kennedy. He says he doesn't. That's what at least we've been told. That's what Larry said. Let's see if that's here. But these CIA transcripts are fascinating. I mean, think about this. One of the Watergate burglars was, in fact, a CIA asset. There are all sorts of new things about what we were doing around the world that the CIA was far more. And there's mixed into this are all the Church Committee findings that often were classified when the Church Committee came out. The abuses and the concept of how the Kennedy and Johnson administrations used the CIA really going to be eye-opening to people that look back. It will be even a darker era for the CIA than we know. Listen, the CIA does a lot of great stuff, so I'm a big fan of what they do, and the men and women there are so brave, but we're starting to get a sense of what the Wild West of the CIA really looked like in the 60s and 70s, and maybe some of that created a motive for someone to try to kill President Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah. I want to ask you, for someone who knows so much about this, and you've heard so many of the theories that have swirled around about it, were there any formerly thought of harebrained ideas and tinfoil theories that most people thought was not plausible that got proven right?
Listen, I think early on the idea that the mob was involved got laughed off. Jack Ruby really wasn't a mobster. We had a lot of this trying to protect the mob, and now what we know is that the CIA and the mob were a lot more closely in bed together during this period and may have been doing Kennedy's bidding without Kennedy and his brother, Bobby Kennedy, knowing that it was the mob doing a lot of this. They don't, the CIA doesn't tell the president all the specific details, how they carry out an operation. Yeah. I think that dynamic may be one of the things that helps us reinterpret some of the historical events of the 1960s, a very turbulent time, lots of assassinations, MLK. The other thing I think was really important to me, one of the stuff I looked at, and Larry referenced it, is the first time Lee Harvey Oswald turns up in the CIA's files is 1959.
Right, 3 years.
That's a lot earlier than what we thought. And there's one chronology we're going to put out tomorrow morning where people will see, there's a lot of monitoring of Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah. All right, and let's finish with one final topic. Chuck Schumer getting a lot of heat from his own party, but Maryland Congressman Glenn Ivey has become the first congressman or the first Democrat to officially call for him to step down.
This is a train starting to form. He's the engineer, but this train is going to get filled up with more Democrats. I think Chuck Schumer is going to have a difficult spring and summer. He can weather it. He's weathered lots of other things, but his own party eating its own right now. They're frustrated and might not take it out on somebody that they could take it out on.
Yeah. I'm getting kind of Mitch McConnell vibes from when Republicans were calling for Mitch McConnell to step down, and ultimately, he says he's heading out.
I think the progressive left, which is much younger than the traditional liberal leadership of the party, have been itching for a change, to force change and bring down the average age of a leader in the Democratic Party. Maybe this is their moment.
Yeah, well, but what the congressman said, what Glenn Ivey said was, you know, I didn't want to shut the government down, but in this instance, I feel like he should have. So
yeah, or they could have got something for it, as they said. Listen,
Nancy
civil
Pelosi
war
said.
inside the Democratic Party, what you and I have been talking about for 2 weeks. I think there's a very real battle for the heart of the party that's going to play out before our eyes in the next few months.
Well, and as that polling that we saw, the internal polling, no one really seems to represent the party at this point. There's
That's
not
right.
a general consensus of
of
anybody
what it
carrying
is.
the torch for
What do
them.
they stand for?
Yeah. All right, everybody. We will see you back here at 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. Grant Stinchfield is going to take you through the next hour. Head over to justthenews.com for breaking headlines every minute of the night.